Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. I was totally fascinated to discover that Classical Jyotish treats marriage compatibility incredibly seriously. In fact, it treats it a whole lot like a really rigorous corporate hiring process. Marriage is just way too important for a quick glance, right? So let's unpack exactly how this complex process actually works.
See, most people think compatibility is just a simple number. You've probably heard people say things like, oh, we got a 28 out of 36, or we matched 32 out of 36, or maybe even a perfect 36, and then they just stop there. But we're going to explore why a perfect score can still completely fail in the real world. Classical Jyotish definitely does not stop at just a number.
Think about the difference between how the general public views this, relying on just one single test, versus how a professional astrologer actually does it. They look at multiple rounds, exactly like an employer hiring a star candidate. Think about it. You wouldn't hire someone just because their resume looks okay at a quick glance, right? You'd do a basic fit check, a technical interview, and you'd absolutely need HR approval, because nobody wants to hire a disaster. Well, compatibility works exactly the same way.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We've got 4 rounds to get through. Test 1 is the resume screen. Test 2 is the blood group test. Test 3 is the real interview. And Test 4 is HR approval. Let's get right into it.
All right, starting off with round 1, test 1, the resume screen. You might know this as the famous Guna Milan system.
So where does this famous score of 36 actually come from? Well, it's based on 8 categories called Koots. Now don't worry about memorizing all these names right now, but just to give you the full picture, you've got Varna, Vasha, Tara, Yoni, Graha Maitri, Gana, Bhakoot, and Nadi. Add them up, and that's your 36 total points. But remember, the names aren't nearly as important as the concept behind them. This number, it is truly only the beginning.
Now, you might look at the standard score brackets and think, it's pretty straightforward, right? Below 18 is weak, scaling all the way up to excellent if you're above 32. But here is the absolute kicker. You can never, ever just stop at the total score. Why? Because a supposedly strong score can easily hide a serious underlying problem, and a moderate score can absolutely become a highly successful marriage.
The real secret here is knowing which of these categories actually carry the most weight. For example, the source emphasizes that Nadi is the most critical Koot because it's directly associated with health and progeny. An uncancelled Nadi dosha is a massive red flag. This is not something you just casually ignore. But then look at Bhakoot, which indicates emotional and financial harmony. Unlike Nadi, Bhakoot is frequently cancelled out through sign-lord relationships and other conditions. It's actually the most commonly cancelled major dosha. So not all points are created equal.
Okay, moving right along to round 2. The blood group test. This is where we finally demystify Manglik Matching.
There is so much fear around being a Manglik, but honestly, the source points out that this is a massive public misunderstanding. People think it's some sort of curse. It turns out it's really not. The only thing that actually matters is if the two individuals' types align. Just like a blood transfusion, you simply need compatible types. That's it. If you break down the possible pairings, the logic is super straightforward. A non-Manglik pairing with a non-Manglik? Good. A Manglik with a Manglik? Good. Even two people with a Banga, which is a cancelled Manglik status, totally good. The genuine mismatch, the literal only one you really need to watch out for, happens when a pure Manglik pairs up with a non-Manglik.
But, and this is a big but, you can't just guess this stuff. The source outlines a very essential rule. Astrologers have to check the Manglik status from the Lagna, the Moon, and Venus. And most importantly, they must test for a cancellation, a Banga, before ever officially declaring someone truly Manglik.
All right, so they've passed the screen. Now we enter round 3, the real interview. This is where the deep dive into the charts truly begins.
This is where the heavy lifting happens. We toss out those simple scores and start the technical interview by analyzing the primary D1 chart's foundation. We're going through a strict checklist here, checking the 7th house, the 7th lord, the exact condition of Venus. We're looking closely for any afflictions, combustion, Dastana placements, and benefic support. Essentially, we are asking the biggest question of all, does this chart inherently support a partnership? But we're not done, because marriage truly matures in the Navamsa, or D9 chart. We run a whole separate, strict checklist there to verify the long-term potential of the partnership. At a bare minimum, we examine the D9 Lagna, the D9 7th house, the D9 7th lord, and the condition of both Venus and Jupiter in this specific chart.
Now, there's a really fascinating technique the author Shivanshu Pandey brings up here. He reads the Navamsha from within itself. What does that mean? It means judging D9 lordships directly using the D9 chart itself. While a lot of astrologers will track the D1 7th lord into the D9, and both approaches absolutely exist in the tradition, the golden rule in this source is to pick one system and stick to it consistently. You definitely do not want to mix your systems.
Once you got that foundation locked in, sure, there are some pretty intense advanced compatibility techniques you can layer on. Things like checking the Upapada Lagna, the second from the Upapada Lagna, advanced Navamsa cross-reading, and weighted synthesis. But honestly, mastering the basic interview we just covered is the absolute essential first step before you get into those weeds.
All right, we are down to the wire, the final test, HR approval, which is all about timing and dashas. Why is this the final hurdle? Because honestly, you could have the absolute perfect candidate, but if you hire them at the absolute wrong time, it's going to fail. First things first, we look for Dasha Sandhi. This is that highly unstable transition period between major life chapters, or Mahadashas. Making a massive commitment like marriage during this inherently unstable window requires extreme caution. Think of planetary periods as the actual weather of your life. Rahu and Ketu Mahadashas are generally pretty unsupportive for marriage. They don't automatically prevent it, but Rahu cranks up the restlessness, and Ketu increases detachment. It just reduces the overall quality of the timing. On the flip side, supportive periods are your best weather windows. This is usually your 7th Lord Mahadasha, Venus periods, or strong benefic periods that are closely connected to marriage indicators.
So here's the ultimate takeaway from this entire process. There is literally no magic number. A high 30 out of 36 score can absolutely fail if the timing's off. Meanwhile, a low 22 out of 36 score can completely succeed if it passes the deep dive and HR rounds. A strong chart match can struggle purely because of timing, and a strong score can fail on a Manglik mismatch. The final verdict? It only comes when all 4 of these tests agree.
If you've been following along and studying this material, grasping these 4 tests of compatibility really rounds out the foundational concepts of Jyotish. We've explored the planets, the nakshatras, Rashi and Bhava, Navamsha, Arudalagna, Dashas, and now compatibility. Once this foundation is rock solid, the advanced layers of the system become so much easier to grasp moving forward.
I really want to leave you with this brilliant quote from the author Shivanshu Pandey. It basically sums up everything we've talked about, reminding us that true understanding comes from seeing how all these moving parts connect. He says, "Do not read astrology as keywords, read it as a system."
So, keeping all of this in mind, I gotta ask you, if a seemingly perfect score of 36 out of 36 isn't nearly enough to guarantee a match, what surprising truths might be hiding inside your own cosmic resume once you look past the basic numbers? Thanks for watching this explainer and keep exploring.